A billionaire businessman from Lagos secretly tested his wife and children by faking complete financial ruin, believing they only loved him for his wealth. But 6 months later, when he discovered what his wife Adunni had been doing in secret to keep their family together, her actions would leave him speechless and shock an entire continent. Kwame Asante thought he knew his family. He thought he understood the depth of their love, but what he was about to learn would forever change how he viewed the woman he married and the children they raised together. This is not just another tale of wealth and deception. This is a profound lesson about the true nature of love, sacrifice, and what it means to be family. In the bustling heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where glass towers pierce the sky and wealth flows like the mighty Niger River, lived Kwame Asante, a man whose business empire stretched across 3 continents. At 45 years old, Kwame had built his fortune from nothing, starting with a single imported car and growing his automobile business into one of West Africa's largest dealership networks. His mansion in Victoria Island stood as a testament to his success. With 15 bedrooms, a private pool overlooking Lagos Lagoon, and staff quarters housing 12 employees, it was the kind of home that graced magazine covers. Yet within these walls lived a family that seemed genuinely happy. Adunni Asante, his wife of 18 years, was a gentle soul with eyes that sparkled like morning dew. At 42, she carried herself with the grace of a queen, her beauty unmarred by time or worry. She had married Kwame when he was still building his empire, standing by him through sleepless nights and uncertain times. Their 3 children were the pride of their hearts. Kemi, 17, was preparing for university, with dreams of becoming a doctor. Tunde, 14, showed remarkable talent in mathematics and spoke of following his father into business. Little Falake, just 11, filled their home with laughter and innocent questions about the world. Every morning, the family gathered for breakfast on their marble terrace. Adunni would serve traditional Nigerian dishes alongside continental options, ensuring everyone started their day well-fed and loved. Kwame would share his plans for the day, asking each child about their studies and dreams. To outsiders, they were the perfect African success story. Kwame provided generously for his extended family, paying school fees for numerous nieces and nephews, supporting his aging parents, and contributing to community development projects. Adunni ran a small charity focused on educating girls in rural communities. But success can plant seeds of doubt in even the strongest hearts. As Kwame's wealth grew, so did the number of people who surrounded him. Business associates laughed louder at his jokes. Extended family members visited more frequently. Community leaders sought his opinions on matters far beyond his expertise. Slowly, a troubling question began to gnaw at his mind. Did people love Kwame Asante, or did they love his money? This doubt crept into his most sacred relationships. When Kemi asked for money to attend a school trip to South Africa, he wondered if she would still hug him goodnight if he were poor. When Tunde proudly showed him expensive gadgets his friends owned, Kwame questioned whether his son valued their relationship or the lifestyle it provided. Even Adunni's gentle requests for household expenses began to feel different under this lens of suspicion. The breaking point came during a family gathering for his mother's 70th birthday. Mama Ngozi, Adunni's mother, made an offhand comment that cut deep. "Adunni is so lucky," she told relatives within Kwame's hearing. "She will never know poverty like we did. Her children will never struggle." That night, as Kwame lay in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling fan that cost more than most families earned in a year, the seed of doubt bloomed into a terrible plan. He would test them. He would strip away the money, the comfort, the security, and see what remained. Only then would he know if their love was real. What Kwame failed to realize was that love cannot be tested without being wounded. And some wounds change everything. Kwame Asante was a brilliant businessman, and his plan reflected that intelligence in its cruel precision. Over 3 months, he carefully orchestrated what appeared to be the complete collapse of his empire. He began by spreading rumors of financial difficulties. A few trusted business associates were quietly informed that Kwame was facing cash flow problems. He deliberately lost several major contracts, claiming poor judgment and market miscalculations. To make the deception convincing, he moved the majority of his assets into offshore accounts his family knew nothing about, leaving only enough to maintain basic appearances. The first cracks appeared at the breakfast table on a Tuesday morning in September. Kwame announced that they would need to reduce household expenses. Business has been challenging, he explained, avoiding Adunni's concerned gaze. We need to let some of the staff go. Adunni reached across the table and touched his hand. Whatever we face together, she said softly. The children and I understand. Kemi and Tunde nodded solemnly, while Folake asked innocent questions about what this meant for their family. Kwame watched their reactions carefully, cataloguing each expression for future analysis. Within weeks, the mansion's staff was reduced from 12 to 3. The gardener, 2 house cleaners, and the part-time chef were dismissed with generous severance packages that Kwame secretly funded from his hidden accounts. Adunni took over many household duties without complaint, rising earlier to prepare meals and staying up later to ensure everything was maintained. By November, Kwame announced they could no longer afford the mansion's maintenance. We will have to move, he told his family over dinner. I have found a modest apartment in IKEA. It will be temporary, until business improves. The shock on their faces was genuine. Kemi's university plans suddenly seemed uncertain. Tunde worried about changing schools and leaving his friends. Folake cried, not understanding why they had to leave the only home she had ever known. But it was Adunni's response that surprised Kwame most. She gathered their children close and spoke with quiet strength. A home is not made of marble or gold, she told them. A home is made of love. As long as we are together, we will be home. The move to the 3-bedroom apartment in IKEA was devastating for everyone except Kwame, who secretly thrilled at this new phase of his experiment. The apartment, while decent by middle-class standards, felt cramped after the mansion's spaciousness. The children had to share rooms. There was no pool, no garden, no staff quarters. Extended family members began to distance themselves. Cousins who once visited weekly found excuses to stay away. Business associates stopped returning calls. The social invitations dried up like desert streams. Kwame watched it all with the detached interest of a scientist observing lab specimens. He noted how Mama Ngozi, Adunni's mother, began making subtle comments about her daughter's unfortunate situation. He observed how some of their friends found reasons to be too busy for social gatherings. But he also noticed other things. He saw how Adunni never complained, not once. She adapted to cooking in a smaller kitchen, cleaning without help, and managing the household budget with mathematical precision. She sold her jewelry piece by piece to supplement their reduced income, never mentioning the sacrifices to anyone. Kemi took a part-time job tutoring younger students to help with family expenses. Tunde started walking to school instead of being driven, never complaining about the longer journey. Folika learned to appreciate simple pleasures, finding joy in library books instead of expensive toys. As Christmas approached, the true test intensified. There would be no expensive gifts, no elaborate celebrations, no lavish family gatherings. Kwame watched to see how his family would handle their first Christmas without wealth. Adunni gathered the children and explained they would have a simple celebration. We will make gifts for each other, she suggested. Something from the heart costs nothing but means everything. On Christmas morning, Kwame received handmade cards and simple crafts from his children. Adunni gave him a photo album she had created, filled with family memories and handwritten notes about why each moment mattered. The gifts cost almost nothing, yet they moved him in ways his expensive watches and gadgets never had. Still, he pressed on with his test. By March, 6 months into the experiment, Kwame had achieved what he set out to do. They were living like a middle-class family, struggling with bills, making difficult choices about expenses, and facing the reality of limited resources. But something unexpected was happening. Instead of revealing shallow motives, the hardship was revealing the true depth of his family's character. And slowly, Kwame began to realize that his test was revealing more about himself than about them. The truth was about to surface in a way that would shake him to his core. On a humid Saturday afternoon in March, Kwame made a discovery that would haunt him forever. He had been checking the mail when he noticed an envelope addressed to Adunni from Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Curiosity turned to concern as he recognized the hospital's letterhead. Was someone in the family sick? Had Adunni been hiding a medical condition? Unable to contain his worry, He opened the letter. What he read made him sink into the nearest chair, his hands trembling. The letter was a receipt for blood donations. Not one donation, not two, but dozens. Adunni had been donating blood plasma twice weekly for the past 5 months, earning money to supplement their household income. The medical report attached showed she was dangerously close to anemia from the frequency of donations. But this was only the beginning of his discoveries. As Kwame sat in shocked silence, more pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. He remembered how tired Adunni had seemed lately, how she sometimes grew dizzy when standing quickly, how she had been eating smaller portions at meals. He had attributed it to stress, never imagining the truth. Driven by a mixture of horror and curiosity, Kwame began investigating further. He checked their apartment when Adunni was out, looking through her personal belongings with the guilt of a thief in his own home. In a small box hidden beneath their bed, he found documentation that revealed the full extent of his wife's sacrifices. Receipts from a pawn shop showed she had sold not just her jewelry, but also her deceased grandmother's precious gold bangles. Family heirlooms she had sworn to pass down to Kemi. Bank records revealed she had been working as a seamstress from home, taking in alterations and repairs during the hours when the family thought she was resting. But the most devastating discovery was a letter Adunni had written, but never sent, addressed to her sister Yemi in London. In it, she poured out her heart about their financial struggles. But what shocked Kwame was not her complaints. There were none. Instead, she wrote about how proud she was of her husband for handling their difficulties with dignity, how grateful she was that they still had each other, and how she was determined to do whatever it took to keep their family together. Yemi. The letter read, "I know you have offered to send money, but Kwame's pride is precious to me. He is working so hard to rebuild what we lost. I can see the weight he carries, trying to provide for us. I will not let him feel like a failure. Whatever I must do to support our family, I will do gladly. This is what love means, not just sharing the good times, but holding each other up when the world tries to knock us down." Kwama's vision blurred as he read those words. This woman, this incredible woman, had been literally giving her blood to protect his pride. While he had been testing her love, she had been proving it in ways he never imagined possible. The final revelation came when he discovered Adunni's hidden correspondence with several of their children's teachers. She had been working as a volunteer tutor for underprivileged children at their school, offering her services in exchange for reduced fees for Kemi and Tunde. The teachers praised her dedication and skill, noting how she never missed a session despite her own family's struggles. As the full weight of his wife's sacrifices became clear, Kwame felt something break inside his chest. This was not the revelation he had expected. He had been looking for evidence of shallow love, of people who would abandon him when the money disappeared. Instead, he had discovered a woman whose love was so deep, so genuine, that she would literally sacrifice her own health to preserve his dignity. But there was more to learn. The next week, while following Adunni discreetly, Kwame discovered she had been attending community meetings for struggling families, offering encouragement and practical advice to women facing financial hardships. Despite having very little herself, she shared what she could: knowledge, hope, and solidarity. "Money comes and goes," he overheard her telling another woman whose husband had lost his job. "But if your family loves each other, you have everything you need to rebuild. My husband is the strongest man I know. We will rise again because we rise together." Standing outside that community center, listening to his wife defend and praise him to strangers while he had been deceiving her for months, Kwame finally understood the magnitude of his betrayal. He had not been testing love, he had been torturing it. The woman he had doubted was willing to give her blood, sell her treasures, work her fingers raw, and sacrifice her health, all to protect his pride and keep their family strong. While he had been playing games with their security, she had been proving that true love does not need testing because it reveals itself through action, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. That night, as Kwame watched Adunni prepare dinner with ingredients she had carefully budgeted and purchased with money earned through her own sacrifices, he knew his cruel experiment had to end. But he also knew that ending it would be easier than living with what he had learned about himself and about the extraordinary woman he had married. The confession came on a quiet Sunday evening, as the family sat together in their small living room. The children were studying, Adunni was mending clothes by hand to save money, and Kwame could no longer bear the weight of his deception. "I need to tell you all something," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. What followed was the most difficult conversation of Kwame's life. He told them everything: the hidden accounts, the orchestrated business failures, the deliberate move to the apartment, the months of careful deception. He watched the shock, confusion, and hurt play across their faces as the truth unfolded. Kemi was the first to speak, her voice shaking with emotion. "You mean we could have stayed in our home? I could have gone to university without worrying about the cost. You put us through all this suffering as some kind of test." Tunde sat silent, processing the revelation that his father had deliberately made their lives harder to satisfy his own doubts. Little Falake began to cry, not fully understanding the complexity of what had happened, but sensing the pain that filled the room. But it was Adunni's response that would echo in Kwame's heart forever. She looked at him with eyes full of sorrow, not anger, but deep, profound sadness. "Kwame," she said softly, "did 18 years of marriage teach you so little about who I am? Did you really believe that a woman who loved you when you had one car would stop loving you if you had none?" The silence that followed was deafening. "I gave my blood," Adunni continued, her voice growing stronger. "I sold my grandmother's bangles. I worked until my fingers bled, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because that is what love does. It gives, it sacrifices, it endures. You did not need to test my love, Kwame. You needed to trust it." The days that followed were perhaps more difficult than the months of fake poverty. Moving back to the mansion felt hollow when trust had been shattered. The returned staff seemed like strangers. The restored luxury felt meaningless when the family's foundation had been shaken. Kemi struggled with resentment, questioning everything her father had ever taught her about honesty and integrity. Tunde withdrew, unsure how to reconcile the father he had admired with the man who had deceived them all. Foliette clung to her mother, sensing the tension even if she could not fully comprehend its source. But Adunni, remarkable Adunni, became the architect of their healing. "We are hurt," she told Kwame one evening as they walked through their restored garden. "But we are not broken. You made a terrible mistake, but you are still the man I chose to love. Now you must choose to become worthy of that love again." The path to redemption was neither quick nor easy. Kwame began by making amends in practical ways. He donated a substantial amount to the hospital's blood bank, funding equipment that would help other donors safely contribute. He established a scholarship fund for children from struggling families, understanding now what financial stress really meant for ordinary people. More importantly, he began the hard work of rebuilding trust within his own family. He attended family counseling sessions, openly discussing his insecurities and the fears that had driven him to such extreme measures. He learned to express his appreciation for his family's love without needing proof of it. Slowly, carefully, the Asante family began to heal. Kemi eventually forgave her father, though she insisted on attending university on academic scholarship rather than accepting his money. "I want to earn my education," she told him, "just like Mama earned our respect through her actions." Tunde found his own way to process what had happened, writing an essay for school about the difference between testing love and trusting it. His teacher was so moved by his insights that she shared it with other educators as an example of wisdom beyond his years. Folake, in the innocent way of children, was perhaps the quickest to forgive, though she sometimes asked pointed questions that revealed her own growing understanding of what had happened. The community's reaction was mixed when word of Kwame's deception eventually spread. Some praised Adunni's extraordinary love and sacrifice. Others criticized Kwame's methods, while acknowledging the harsh lessons learned. Many found themselves examining their own relationships and motivations. But perhaps the most profound change was in Kwame himself. The man who had once doubted his family's love now understood that love is not something to be tested, but something to be treasured. He learned that trust, once broken, must be rebuilt through consistent action, not grand gestures. A year later, as the Asante family gathered for another Christmas, this one in their restored home, but with hearts forever changed, Kwame reflected on what his test had really revealed. It had not shown him whether his family's love was real. It had shown him that his own understanding of love had been shallow and incomplete. True love, he now knew, was not something that needed proof. It was something that gave proof of itself every single day through small acts of kindness, sacrifice, and commitment. Adunni had been giving him that proof for 18 years. He had simply been too blind to see it. The test was over. The learning had just begun. This tale from the heart of Africa reminds us that love cannot be measured by wealth or tested by hardship. It reveals itself through the countless small sacrifices we make for those we cherish, the blood we give, the treasures we sell, the pride we swallow, all in service of something greater than ourselves. If this tale of Kwame and Adunni touched your heart, share it with others who need to remember that true love needs no testing, only trust. Subscribe to Folktales Village for more stories that illuminate the profound wisdom hidden within African hearts and homes. Like this video if it reminded you to appreciate the love that surrounds you, and let us know in the comments about a time when someone showed you love through sacrifice rather than words. Because in the end, the greatest stories are not about wealth or poverty, success or failure. They are about the extraordinary power of ordinary people to love beyond measure, forgive beyond reason, and heal beyond hope. Until our next tale, remember, the richest person is not the one with the most money, but the one whose love is trusted without question.